Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Hope you guys are doing well. It's a beautiful day here. I'm excited for what we got going on and all the good things that we have set up for you guys today. I'm actually, as you can see, I have so many different platforms. It's kind of cool. I'm sitting here on a beautiful day here in Green Bay, Wisconsin. We had quite an interesting day today, our power shut off. So we actually had a little fun outside of the Wellness Way. We had a hula hoop contest. And we had we grabbed the cornhole and actually started playing some games out there. So then we got power back on. So it's been just a fun, enjoyable day. So I hope you guys are doing good. We should start to see our stream here going on. So I'm excited for it. So now that being said, let's see how we are doing. It looks like we are going to be pumping on live here pretty quick. So welcome, everybody. What we're going to do today is, like I said, we're broadcasting from our other platform because I want to go over a couple articles that I believe are going to be incredible for you guys to see and know. So let's see here. Let's make sure that we are streaming live. Yes, we are. It's live. It's exciting. There we go. There it is. It's kind of great. So we're just going to make sure our platforms are doing good. Yeah. So how are you guys today? Put in the comments below. All right. Let's see here. Now, topic that's going to be quite emotional. But before we get into it, we're talking about SIDS today. But before we get into it, let's chat a little bit about our website. As you can see, as you come here, you're going to see, go to our website. It's absolutely incredible. A lot of people said, Doc, where do you go and actually see where you can get all the newsletters? Well, if you actually come to the website and you scroll all the way to the bottom, and you sign up right there. You know what I'm saying? Put your email there, and it's kind of nice. We actually get all the newsletters because everybody that saw that, we have a newsletter comes out every single week with all of our investigative journalists. And actually, no joke, as we have more journalists that come on, we'll have more articles come out. This is stuff that they investigate deeply right with me. They take recaps of the show. They have all the cooking stuff that comes out from recipes and everything. We also have videos that go with it. We have our media. We have so many things, as you can see. It even talks about join the conversation. There's so many platforms that you can find us on because we definitely want to give you the best stuff that you guys have to be able to apply to your life and make it great. So excited to always have that with you, but just always remember, no matter where they censor us, they can't censor us on our website. As you can see, I do journey videos that way to see where at journeys. As you can see up here too, you can up the top, this is where you watch ADP if you ever want to watch it. But if you click on there, it's kind of nice. You can legitimately go all the way to the bottom and see all of our shows. This show right here recently. Oh, I guess I'm broadcasting live here right now. I'm live on our platform too. But as you can see down in the latest episodes, you'll have the one that just was on breast cancer on there. Met with a video team today and they just got some incredible things come out. But yeah, as you can see, we're actually broadcasting live from here right now. Great job, team. I didn't even know we were doing that. That's a nice thing about being surrounded by amazing people. So let's get out of here. And let's get into our topic today that was shared by Daily Wire. Once again, it's a great publication, great journalists and everything. But I want to do is this. I want to kind of talk to you about some things. So let me get over to my screen real quick and chat with you like this for a second before I jump over there. So follow me on this. We talked about breast cancer before. And the one thing that I want you guys to know about breast cancer, if you go back to the video, what they do is they talk about estrogen receptor or progesterone receptor or HER receptor. And what they do is they give you this fallacy that it's so much based on the receptor that guess what? That if you just knew that you had estrogen receptor, progesterone receptor, you could avoid it or determine, what course of treatment you got. And I agree. From their standpoint, they actually have that perspective. I'm telling you right now, it's a very misleading perspective. So then all of a sudden we're going to talk about SIDS. And if you dig deeper on it and come from a different perspective, you're going to really realize that they're actually putting the cart before the horse. So as I showed you with breast cancer, their thinking is significantly off. So that's why it'll never lead to women figuring out what's really going on. But on top of it, that's why you see so much repeated cases. And the sad part is this, their biggest thing that they're always saying is, well, we have very effective treatments. Well, we have very effective treatments to allowing them to get sick and deal with it that way. So from a standpoint of medicine and treating or managing things, the common medication they want to give a person is for 5 to 10 years for hormonal therapy post if they are ER or PR positive for the receptor. But that's a really, really bad way of doing it because they actually act like side effects and all the things that happen from those hormone therapies are just okay. So if they keep you in a state where they can just retreat you and retreat you and retreat you to the point where you don't get better, it's actually a pretty bleak prognosis, but they actually think it's success. So let's get into the article of today from Daily Wire, which thank you for putting it out. But once again, I'm going to kind of show you in a little different perspective how I want you to view this, because if you don't view it that way, it's kind of a little bit misleading. So here we go. Breakthrough. Researchers identify possible cause of deadly SIDS infant disease. All right. Now remember, what is SIDS? Sudden infant death syndrome is another way of saying we don't know what happened. They just suddenly died. And it's quite interesting because watch the language that you'll see within the article where it shows you totally misleading about, what they think SIDS is. But on top of it, they have a SIDS Infant Death Syndrome Awareness Month. Now, once again, why do they have that? Because it's becoming so common that what they want to do, just like breast cancer, just like heart disease, like every condition, there's always an awareness month. Well, like I said before, we got to stop worrying about awareness and start looking more at a different perspective. Because just like we've had an awareness of breast cancer significantly with the pig ribbons for 30 plus years, we're no better than we were before. If you think effective treatments of people already getting sick is actually a success, it's not, because death rates still go up every year. The amount of women that get breast cancer every year is still going up. So their concept of success is that they have a success rate of 5 years. Now, once again, their idea of success rate, I'd like to see them put it out to 10 years, because then their quote success rate they say is great for treatment actually drops down very significantly. That's why they stopped at 5 years. But now talking about SIDS, breakthrough researcher. Now they're on. This is sad because this young lady who lost her child, but here we go. A sleep expert who lost her son to sudden infant death syndrome and spent the last 30 years looking for an answer for this impeccable, the disease may have been made a breakthrough discovery, helping to solve the puzzle. Here's Dr. Carmen Harrington makes world's first breakthrough in identifying a baby's vulnerability to SIDS. Well, that's actually pretty misleading because that's not really true. What they're really saying is this is the first woman that we've actually, scientists that we've had actually do something to where it isn't looking at vaccines. But what I'm going to show you, if you actually dig in a little deeper, it's kind of interesting if you dig into the research that way to what you really find out if you actually dig deeper than what they do here. So once again, here we go. As she continues to do it, and I think it's great she's doing research. My research started 29 years ago with the death of my precious son, Damien. Long and challenging work, but now we know that SIDS babies have low levels of an enzyme called BCHE. First time ever we can work with babies while still alive and prevent SIDS. So she lost her son when he was 2 years old. All right, when she was 2 years old. Now, Dr. Carmel Harrington, who has a PhD in sleep medicine from Sydney University in Australia, lost her 2-year-old son, Damien, to SIDS in 1991. Now, a study has identified the first biochemical marker that could help detect babies more at risk of sudden infant death syndrome while they are still alive. An apparently healthy baby going to sleep and not waking up is every parent's nightmare. And until now, there was absolutely no way of knowing which infant would succumb. But that's not the case anymore, Harrington asserted. Now, once again, I'm going to come back here because I want to chat with you about this. I love how they say this healthy baby goes to sleep and then doesn't wake up. A healthy baby does not go to sleep and doesn't wake up. All right, that's a sick baby. That's somebody that has something going on. It's just that they don't present with any major illness. And what you're going to find out, now this is significant because Dr. Paul Thomas has done this in his research and other researchers. It's very common, once again, that a child has a vaccine and then ends up actually dying. They don't equate to that whatsoever. But even with now these biochemical markers, you would actually be able to see some of the things that are going to come out. And you can see it from her research. They will not equate this, but we're going to put some of the things together to kind of show you this. Now, that being said, let's go back to the article. All right, here we go. Researchers led Harrington identified the BCHE as a biochemical marker that could help solve SIDS. All right, I'm hoping that's true, but you're going to find out this is going to end very quickly, especially when you start digging into it. The study found BCHE levels were significantly lower in babies who subsequently died of SIDS compared to living controls and other infant deaths. All right, Sydney Children's Hospital Network reporting added BCHE plays a major role in brain arousal pathways, and researchers believe its deficiency likely indicates an arousal deficit, which reduces the brain's ability to awake or respond to an external environment, causing vulnerability to SIDS. Now, here's what happens. This is very frustrating because that's not what the enzyme does. All right. That's the frustrating part. They're talking like this enzyme is something that what it really does is it's a brain arousal pathway. And research believed its deficiency likely indicates an arousal deficiency. Well, what they're talking about is actually an enzyme that converts some proteins to one form or another, which is actually a neurotransmitter. But here's what happens. That's not its major job because it plays a major role in the brain's arousal pathway. Well, what is that pathway? See, that's where I love how this article is so misleading because what it does, it's not saying that's not true, but that's not the major job of the enzyme. It's not a brain arousal enzyme. See, I love is how they take brain arousal pathway. They do not say brain arousal enzyme. And a researcher believes its deficiency likely indicates an arousal deficit. I've never heard of an arousal deficit because the activity of brain is not based on arousal. It's based on neurological function, okay, which reduces an infant's ability to wake or respond to an external environment. There's the key right there, causing vulnerability to SIDS. Respond to external environment. All right, so what does that mean? The study published in The Lancet, which I read, analyzed BCHE activity in 722 dry blood spots taken at birth as part of a newborn screening program. The study stated, in recent years, the incidence of SIDS has been more than halved by public health campaigns. However, despite this dramatic decline in incidence, now remember, just to let you know, that statistic is actually manipulated. It hasn't gone down. It's actually going up. SIDS remains the major cause of sudden and unexpected death in infants in Western countries, contributing to almost 50% of all deaths, neonatal deaths, all post-neonatal deaths, which is kind of interesting because, once again, it's the most cause of sudden and unexpected deaths, which that's why it's called sudden death. It's not a disease. It's actually they just don't want to label what it is, so they say, well, it's sudden. The study explained that widespread current belief of the causes of SID rests on three simultaneous factors: a vulnerable infant, a critical development period for homeostatic control, and on exogenous stressors. I wonder what those exogenous stressors are. Adding, despite intensive research over the past decades, identification of any specific vulnerability has remained elusive. Now, what they're best saying is, well, we don't really have still a clue even after this research coming out. Harrington stated, babies have a very powerful mechanism to let us know when they are not happy. Usually, if a baby is confronted with a life-threatening situation, such as difficulty breathing during sleep, because they are on their tummies, they will arouse and cry out. What this research shows is that some babies don't have the same robust arousal response. I really don't know how they get that. You know what I'm saying? Because if you look at what the enzyme does, what they're saying is that it converts certain neurotransmitters one form or another, but that's not an arousal hormone, okay? There's excitatory hormones and there's inhibitory hormones, but it's just interesting how they language this that way, because to the public, they're not going to understand that, oh, an arousal pathway. There's no such thing as an arousal pathway. That's what I said. That's why I kind of interesting now, if you notice, when you read actually the research itself, it shows nothing like this. That's why when these things are put together, these actually should be fact checked on there. This has long been thought. Here we go. Let's go back to here. Let's finish up it. Then we'll have a little more comments about it. And actually, no joke, we'll pull up a little bit more. Here we go. This has long been thought to be the case, but up to now, we didn't know what was causing the lack of arousal, she commented. Now that we know that BCHE is involved, we can begin to change the outcome of these babies and make SIDS a thing of the past. Well, that would be only evident if you could figure out the things that actually disrupted that pathway that didn't lead to the production of what you call an arousal pathway. But if you continue to actually damage it, then guess what happens? You'd have to actually go back even farther, because the enzyme is actually made by the liver. It really is. This discovery has opened up the possibility for intervention and finally gives answers to parents who have lost their child so tragically. These families can now live with the knowledge that this was not their fault, she concluded. I always love how we take no responsibility for anything. My child just suddenly died. And even though we just saw the pediatrician 2 days ago, there is no correlation. Causation doesn't mean correlation, or correlation doesn't mean causation that way. But on top of it, it's just not their fault. Well, those enzymes, once again, are made to be produced. And unless you have a major genetic deficiency to where it is not being produced, because they never said it wasn't being produced, they said there's a deficiency. So what can lead to that? But let's go on a little farther. Let's pull up a little things when it comes to this. So that's the end of the article. There's a bunch of comments on there. And if you actually see it, there's a bunch of good arguments on there, which I kind of do like. There are some people seeing those things. But let's see here. Let's look at BCHE and what it does. All right. So let's just look at Science Direct. All right. So once again, it's even hard to produce this, to say this word, butyrcholinesterase, known as BCHE, is a non-specific cholinesterase enzyme that hydrolyzes many different choline esters. Once again, so if you look at, you have acetylcholine, you have the other cholines that once again are neurotransmitters and amino acids that need to be converted to different forms. So if you think about it this way, understandably, I see the fact that you look and go, all right, it's an enzyme. Now, once again, so let's even take a look at it this way. If you look when they talk about some of the things that need to be done that way, it's actually a great enzyme that will cleave and change. And actually, once again, you have different enzymes like the aromatase enzyme. It actually converts testosterone into estradiol or esterone. So if you think of it this way, they're there. And yes, if there is could be a deficiency, if there is an inhibition of that pathway, see, there's the key. If there's an inhibition of the pathway, you're right. There could be a problem converting testosterone into estrogens. Or if there's a stimulation, there can be actually an overproduction, like if you can inhibit and also stimulate these pathways. So let's really do this. But what's an enzyme? So that's a big thing, because remember, this is an enzyme. All right. So let's just even take the definition of enzymes. So let's just pull up Wikipedia, because at least they define something. All right. Now here, let's take a look. Are proteins. So the proteins made by certain organs that act as, here we go, biological catalysts. All right. Catalysts accelerate chemical reactions. The molecules upon which enzymes may act are called substrates. And the enzyme converts the substrates into different molecules known as products. All right, so let's think about that. So I want you to think about that. Let me come over here for a minute. All right. So think about this. As an enzyme, it finds a substrate and converts the substrate from one for another to a new product. So therefore, when they talk about this arousal pathway, I'm like, all right, so you're talking about converting this one form of neurotransmitter to another one, convert this one substrate to another substrate, which might go from a certain inhibitory pathway to an excitatory pathway. That's interesting because, once again, it's not really a pathway, it's converting. So as enzymes, they convert things from one form to another. Let's give you an example. If you were wanting to convert substrate A to substrate D, you have to go A to B, which takes a certain enzyme, B to C, which takes a different enzyme, and C to D, which takes a different enzyme. So what happens is this is one enzyme through certain pathways, and it can be both inhibited or stimulated. So what they're saying is there's things that actually have taken this enzyme and inhibit them. By inhibiting them, they call now that a deficiency in the research. Well, then I'm going to say, listen, if you have normal function to the liver and other organs that produce this, guess what happens? You won't have a deficiency. So there had to be something creating inhibition or creating damage to the organ that led to its deficiency, because you don't eat these things. These are produced. These are produced by your liver and other enzymatic processes. Now, so let's take a look. So let's take a look at BCH and see its real function, because this is the key. Because I started to look up this and I'm going, because when they put research out like this, I'm saying, okay, what's their purpose of doing it? Now, I will give you no opinion, and this may be getting me kicked off and everything, but you remember, if you think about sudden infant death syndrome, it was virtually nil before high doses of vaccines and things that happen. So now if you look what it can do with the repeated aspect of putting these different chemicals in the body, there's certain things that can actually be over-consumed. I mean, the fact that if you keep on draining the fuel tank, it's going to go deficient, or once again, it can be inhibited. So let's see what this enzyme really does. And so we pull up the National Institute of Health, and here we go. So let's take a look at it. So if we look at what it does, let's read the summary here. So let me sneak over to, here we go. Let's sneak over and look at the summary. All right, it's right here. So let me come back so you guys see it. It's right here. You can follow along right there. There we go. Here we are. The gene encodes a cholinesterase enzyme and a member of the type B carboesterase lipase family of proteins. So there you go. It's a protein enzyme that changes things. It's from substrate from one form there. The encoded enzyme exhibits broad substrate specificity and is involved in the detoxifications of poisons. Hmm. Hmm. Let's stop right there. So its main job is not arousal pathways. So as they say, arousal pathways, I'm like, what are you getting at arousal pathways? All right. Because its main job is actually the detoxification of poisons, including organophosphate nerve agents. Ah, ah. Right at birth, an injection. A couple weeks later, 3 months later, 6 months later, year later. So, organophosphate, nerve agents, and pesticides. But here we go. And the metabolism of drugs, including cocaine, heroin, and aspirin. So, how did they get that's main job is actually to an arousal pathway? Now, Durham, here's what happens. It's part of phase one of the liver. It's a phase one aspect of our detoxification of the liver, which, once again, if you know, liver is a metabolizing organ. It converts substrates from one form to the other. It takes this something that could be toxic and actually brings it into a water form and eliminates it that way. But if you're constantly burdening your body with toxins, the enzyme can run out, guys. Or if you damage the organ that actually leads to it, you can actually have some deficiency that way. But I don't know where they're talking about going from, and that's why in the research, and they give this thing that we actually are deficiency and an arousal. I want to go back to this because I just even couldn't even believe it when they said this. Is here we go. I mean, I don't get it. Let me see if I can find it. Here we go. BCHE plays a role in the major brain's pathway, arousal pathway. All right, BCH plays a major role in the brain's arousal pathway. And researchers believe that its deficiency is likely an arousal deficit, which reduces the infant's ability to wake or respond to external environment, causing vulnerability to SIDS. Because I looked up the pathway that they're talking about. And yes, if you look at the neurotransmitters, the brain hormones, the substrates, but it's not a arousal pathway. It's converting a hormone, actually a amino acid based hormone, from one form to another, and actually causing some issues if there's a deficiency there, or if there's some damage, or if there's inhibition of the pathway. So I said, you know something? What I want to do is I want to look at some of the things that actually can cause a deficiency in that pathway. So I started to look up some things. And I said, guys, you start digging deep and you realize that this pathway is not anything newly discovered. See, it's like this. You know what we can do with those SIDS kids? We could probably look and see that they're vitamin D deficient. We probably look at and see that they're deficient in a lot of things. And they go, look, here's what it is. And they so want to focus on the things that could have actually been deficient, but never even led to the deficiencies or why it's there. Because these enzymes are genetically controlled. They're produced. And as long as the organ hasn't had major damage or actually hasn't been inhibited, that enzyme will be produced at a regular basis on a normal basis. And if you actually do something to the body and actually run the fuel tank out, sure, there can be a deficit, but what did you do to even create that deficit? So that's why when you start looking at this, and you start looking at the things of what's happening, if you look at ACHE and BCHE can serve as biochemical markers of various pathogens like liver dysfunction and poisoning by nerve agents. All right, so I'm lost. I'm lost how they went from all this aspect of the enzyme to call it a arousal pathway. See, so misleading to the public. I really wish it'd say, you know something, we found a deficiency of this, and things that can actually cause BCHE to go down is toxins. Is nerve toxins. Nerve toxins, heavy metals, pesticides, organophosphates. So if your mom actually gets injected with poisons, if your mom eats poisons, could there be a deficiency in the brain? If you're born and you eat all this bad stuff that's latent in pesticides and glyphosate and other organic chemicals, you get injected with a bunch of chemicals. Maybe that's what we should be looking at instead of trying to mislead the public and say that there's an arousal pathway. So, Daily Wire, which once again, I do love that company. I know they're a news network. I really like them to say, listen, can we dig a little deeper on here? And they're presenting research, but if you research the article and what the BCHE really does, you would sit there and go, all right, for them to get quoted that's an arousal pathway is very, very, saddening for me, because it's going to say, look, at my child died. They just couldn't wake up because there's deficiency in this enzyme. All right, cool. So what caused deficiency, and what is its main job? Its main job is not an arousal pathway. Its main job to remove actual poisons from the body. And if you look, markers of various pathologies like liver dysfunction. See, and yes, can quote a liver pathway that converts one substrate to another to actually create excitability to the brain be affected? Yes, it can. But to call something an arousal pathway actually is just clinically misleading. It really frustrates me, because they say that's not their fault. Well, what do you mean? Where'd the poisons come from? Where'd the poisons come from? They just magically appear in child's body? So I know it's going to make people upset about what I say, but I'm going, come on, we have to have a little bit more of a in-depth aspect to this that way. So if you look at these substrate converters that way, you actually kind of cool. And like I said, I'll post these references in the thing here. But guess what? Also found some other aspects of organophosphorus nerve agents, the types, the toxicity, and treatments. And here they are. So this was listed in 2020. If you look, there's a significant amount of them. And I just posted it this way. Of everything from pesticides into other organic phosphorus compounds that, once again, that they produce. And that's why I'm not too popular when it comes to Wisconsin farmers, even though I love Wisconsin. Got to remember, they're putting a lot of these things that are neurological poisons that can actually cause some deficits and actually lead to some of these enzymes being deficient. That's why I don't want people to eat bad food. That's why when people tell me that, your body is okay in moderation. Your body doesn't know moderation of nerve agents, of toxicity. So you get that? Because it can create some deficiencies in enzymes that can now lead to a decrease in conversion of things from one form to another, or even a stimulation if it actually goes the other way. Like we talk about certain hormone pathways, there's a lot of hormone pathways that are actually inhibited that actually lead to problems that come about that way too. So here we go. So I started to dig a little deeper and actually talked about some of the pathways and some of the things that can actually lead to some of those that are causing some inhibition and some of the metals and stuff. Copper, aluminum. I wonder where we can get aluminum from. But if you kind of look at some of these things, some of the environmental toxicology that can lead to some of these deficiencies talk about aluminum, high copper, high iron, high calcium. That's why I actually get kind of scared when people are taking calcium carbonate, it's basically limestone. You want to take, if you're going to do a calcium one, more of a calcium lactate, because a lot of these supplements that are actually significant in their dosings and because people are taking them, it actually can lead to some calcium carbonates, like just eating on limestone, which is not that good. So when I see this article that comes out and there's some breakthrough research identify possible cause of deadly SID infants, well, it's actually not really a cause, because you're putting the cart before the horse. If you look, what happens is if all of a sudden there's a deficiency in an enzyme. Now, once again, I believe that the misleading aspect is right here when they talk about that there's a brain's arousal pathway. All right. Now, once again, it's like, oh my goodness, but that's not when it talks about BCH plays a major role in the brain's arousal pathway. If you actually go to the Lancet and read the research, I kind of find it quite interesting when they talk about the pathways and everything, and you can download and get the full article and everything. I just don't know where they talk about it being a major arousal pathway. That's something that you're not going to find in here. All right. You're not going to find it in here, because what they're doing is they're going, okay, listen, with the autonomic nervous system here, when you kind of take a look at this, what they're talking about is, if you look, there's certain neurological substrates you need. And now the conversion of those substrates are important for there to be an excitation or an inhibition, something to wake you up, something to actually put you to sleep. That's why, if you notice, we have inhibitory neurotransmitters and we have excitatory neurotransmitters. The most excitatory neurotransmitter is glutamate. Okay, it really is. And actually, what happens is to convert those substrates from one form to the other, that actually takes this enzymes. Enzymes. So if you look at what reduces those enzymes, you can do two things. You can think of it almost like once again, if you're running a car at 100 miles an hour, you're going to go through the fuel very quickly. Secondarily is this. You can inhibit and cut the gas line going to the engine, and all of a sudden, guess what? The engine looks just fine. And the engine suddenly stops. So once again, is the car okay because the engine suddenly stops? If your car engine just stopped, would you sit there and go, it's a healthy car, it's a good running car? You know what I'm saying? And all of a sudden, if the fuel line going from the fuel tank is disconnected from the engine, that would be called a problem. Or if the hose is plugged, once again, and that's what can happen. So when you look at here, let's just read a little bit. Now, remember, you can actually download more than this. This is just the abstract and everything that way. You can get the full article if you want. But the autonomic dysfunction has been implicated in the pathophysiology of sudden infant death syndrome. BCHE is an enzyme of the cholinergic system, a major branch of the autonomic system, and may provide a measure of autonomic dysfunction. So what are they talking about? It's talking neurological dysfunction. It's not talking a decrease in a pathway of actually arousal. The study was undertaken to evaluate the BCH activity in infants and young children who have died of sudden death syndrome or sudden unexpected. So what they did is, once again, they took a dry spot of it that way. And it's kind of funny, when you talk about the aspect of an arousal pathway, there's nowhere in the research article. Like I said, no scientist would use the term arousal pathway. Yes, they're trying to communicate something to the public, but it actually downplays the role of that enzyme. It downplays the severity of what can happen to these kids if they are toxic, if they're exposed to pesticides and other organic phosphates and metals and stuff like that, because it can inhibit that enzyme, it can damage that enzyme, it can use it up too quickly. And the sad part is this, they're saying, well, we're just deficient in this enzyme for arousal. No, you're also, if you're deficient in that, not only does it affect the autonomic nervous system, it also affects your detox 1 pathway, your phase 1 of your pathway. That means you can't rid certain things. See, it's multifactual. So that's why, once again, when I read that from Daily Wire, I'm like, really? Honestly, you guys do really good reporting. I just was frustrated actually watching this. But let me see. I read the whole thing. There we go. Here we go. Just want to show you. So acetylcholine is a major neurotransmitter. And the autonomic nervous system and the principal neurotransmitter of the parasympathetic pathway is a hydrolysis of a cholinergic synapse by 2 enzymes. There we go. Okay. So once again, it's talking about it actually allows the body to work, nervous system actually function. And therefore, if you're deficient in them, it doesn't work right. All right. So I understand that. Now, if you notice, once again, and you go through it here, and responsible, and it goes through all changing the different forms, substrates, different forms, so nervous system can actually function properly. But if it actually is not there, it's not going to, and they believe that could possibly lead to SIDS. And then once again, it's actually quite neat when you look at the fact of going. That's why if you actually you can do a blood spot that way, but you also do some urine peripheral neurotransmitters like this, just like they do in the blood, and see some of those aspects. So that's why when you look at these things, now granted, the children usually passed away. Yes, some of these were taken from obviously the children that were still alive and everything, but they're trying to look for the death of these, and they're trying to look at deficiencies on there. And they once again, they go through it and they categorize everybody. And you gotta read the study design. I actually thought that was kind of interesting of what they decided on here and how they decided to deal with it that way. But long story short is read it. There it is. It's kind of cool. Once again, you can actually come to your own conclusions. Now remember, am I saying that this is the major cause of SIDS? Nope. What I'd like the scientists do is saying, okay, listen, if the enzyme is deficient, what caused the deficiency? What caused it? Because once again, it's an enzyme very easily produced in the body. And if there's a deficiency, once again, there's factors that can lead to that deficiency. What did it? Now we have a good hold on what actually does that. So that's why if you start working back and start putting the horse before the cart, you can sit there and go, okay, so you saw a deficiency here. Now what leads to it? Now they don't go into that much. They really don't, because they're going to look at going, okay, let's measure this on kids. And I guarantee they're going to try to find some drug they want to give a child when they're first born, or actually a mom give it to them where they're going, because like I said, otherwise Yes, this mother lost her son 30 years ago, but what they're going to look for is some form of treatment and some form of do to actually raise that enzyme. But once again, if you're doing things to lower the enzyme, I think that would be more of a factor to look at than what was done before. So, all right, good stuff today. Good stuff. So as I guys want you to understand is from their perspective, to me, this article did not really justify it being produced out there because, okay, research identified possible cause of deadly SIDS infant disease. Well, that's a far stretch. It really is. And you can have more infant death syndrome awareness months that way. But guess what happens is I don't think they're any closer than they were unless this researcher starts going, okay, what are really leading those deficiencies and where's it come from? And because if you really look at it this way, I mean, this alone right here should just bother you. This right here. When you look at what it really does, an enzyme exhibits broad substrate specificity and is involved in a detoxification of poisons. 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 And I even love how they talk about it. Nerve agents and pesticides. Well, why don't we actually see what the nerve agents and pesticides and things that are doing to these kids that interfere with this enzyme that now lead to a deficiency of it, which now can lead to sudden infant death syndrome. That's the awareness we should have, because it'll never make it back to that, because then you would have to go to going, what are those poisons and pesticides and things that we're putting into it? Do you understand? And this is, I might get kicked off for this. Do you understand there's vaccines that actually have pesticides in them? Think about that. Think about that. So that alone, if it was just a pesticide that was in there, that would cause a problem and deficiency with that enzyme. So when we're injecting into kids and doing these things, I don't know, you draw your own conclusions. You look at it. But once again, listing as a brain's arousal pathway, I believe is misleading parents and misleading the public of what really should be investigated when it does come to this enzyme. All right. That's awesome. Hope you guys had a wonderful time with me today. Love jumping on live. Oh my goodness. It's almost 6:15 already. It's 6:08. It's going to be great. Got a little bit more work to do yet tonight. Remember, I'm going to be traveling coming up here. I'm actually be leaving probably tomorrow for Eau Claire. And I got a big, beautiful crowd coming to Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Obviously, the township is called Altoona. It's a wonderful rec center I'm speaking at. Then I'll be in Minneapolis on Thursday. And then I fly to Phoenix on Saturday. Then I fly to North Dakota on Saturday and Sunday. I would say Friday is Phoenix. And then I fly to Missouri on Monday, Tuesday. And then Tennessee on Wednesday and Thursday. And I finally get back to Green Bay. Yes, I'll be gone from this beautiful city of Green Bay, Wisconsin for over 10 days and stuff. But it's my last couple big trips before I am taking a nice, long needed break from traveling. Not that no joke, I got to go to a couple foreign countries, but I won't be doing a hormone connection seminar. I'll be speaking to bring our Wellness Way concepts and principles and care to places all over the world. And then we have a big launch of our company coming up in fall, which is going to revolutionize healthcare and actually the Wellness Way itself as we become a full branded company. And we have trademarks in different countries all over the world. And it's exciting to be able to bring our message to the world. So that being said, guys, you guys have a beautiful Monday night. It's been a great time here in Green Bay, Wisconsin. I hope to see you guys soon at one of our events that we have left before the end of the month into June. And if not, I actually have more media stuff coming out. Make sure to go to my YouTube channel, Dr. Patrick Flynn, DC, and you can actually see these things and play it on a regular basis. We just put the breast cancer one up. Our team did a wonderful job of editing already from Saturday, putting up, and it'll be up there today. So you can see all these things that are available to you guys. All right, guys, you